calculable. One government agency in the United States calculates it at 10,000 attacks every hour. They only do that at budget time. When it's non-budget time, they sort of fall off the face of the earth. Looking back at the good old days, in 1997, IBM conducted a survey on who are the hackers, and found that 90% of them were amateurs out to demonstrate their ability to penetrate systems, just so that they would have bragging rights. These cyber joyriders were benevolent intruders whose only gain was the satisfaction of proving that they could break through systems, that they were smarter than everybody else. The world today is very different. 65% of the hackers are vicious, whose sole job it is to create financial gain from their efforts. 10% cyber espionage, and the rest are the white hats, people who are trying to do it for political good. Their activities range from disclosure of documents to interruption of operating sites, denial of service, or destruction of information. We're seeing more and more of this. WikiLeaks, people trying to understand what the government is doing. But while so-called white hats have gone into fair share of publicity, as illustrated by the actions of Edward Snowden, the disclosure of Sony, entertainment contracts, the information disclosure of the Panama Papers, and the attacks on ISIS websites, their activities are not intended solely for sole gain, financial gain. The cyber terrorists who represent the biggest problem and require the greatest effort to contain. The hack to gain components come in many forms. The estimate of financial impact on the world economy is difficult to ascertain. But in 2000, PricewaterhouseCoopers estimated it at $1.5 trillion a year. Maybe it's we'll find out. Estimates now range between $5 and $15 trillion. No industry that we know of, no country we know of. The cyber terrorists who represent the biggest problem and require the greatest effort to get in, they hack the game components come in many forms, and we're seeing more and more of the ways they hack. I've spent a great deal of time looking at the model of what happens to your data after it's stolen. How many people think that their accounts have been hacked? I've spent a great deal of time looking at the model. Come on. Thank you, sir. An honest man. It's almost guaranteed that everybody in this room at one point or another has had their information stolen. There are websites you can go to find out about it. Ignorance not being bliss. How many of you have gotten new credit cards from your credit card company? You think it's because they changed the design? They didn't like the color? More and more that information is being compiled in a model that is really very interesting the way they do it. You take a look at what hackers do, the pricing model that they use, the data warehousing that they use. So what hackers are doing is they're stealing information about you from many sources and actually are compiling a profile of you. The more information they have about you, the more the information is worth. So for example, if they steal your credit card information and they know your buying habits, that information is invaluable. Because if you buy from a particular store, you can rest assured they will make purchases from that store in hopes that you just say, well, I forgot the receipt. And so information like that varies from value of being $1 per person to $100. We start to look at what the information is and how they share it amongst themselves. They work in joint ventures where information is stolen, passed on to somebody else, shipped to somebody else, and then sold on eBay by somebody else. The pricing models are shared information. The way they distribute the information, quality control check. In the United States, when you pump your own gas, you have to put in zip code. And the reason for that was the FBI profiling model was that if you stole a credit card, the first thing you did was go to a gas station and try to pump your own gas. If it worked, you were free to buy anything you want. If it didn't work, you threw it in the trash can. The United States, 15 years to figure that out. If it worked, that's why we're here. Actually, I came from the sunshine. That didn't quite work out. So that we're starting to look at different profiles of what cyber terrorists do, but understand it's an economic model. They're not doing this for fun. They're not doing it for harm. They're not trying to ruin economies. It would be bad business to destroy your customers. And so we're starting to look at how institutions are being hacked by them and what they're doing to them. The pricing model is sophisticated. Do not believe this is a bunch of people sitting in a garage trying to sell you, steal things from you. They know what they're doing. Many of us are aware of how institutions have simply paid off hackers to give them back control of the systems and data. Cyber ransom has become one of the most efficient kidnapping and extortion models in the history of civilization. Don't need a gun, you don't need to rob anybody, you don't need a getaway man, you don't have to take anybody's body, you don't have to worry about a drop site. All you have to do is hijack their information. And when you start to look at it, you don't have to hide out from anybody. It's almost impossible for you to get caught. What it involves is simply encrypting data of an organization or an individual so there's no longer usable. The cyber kidnappers then charge what is really a nominal fee. So for an individual, for example, it's a few $100s. If you're a corporation, it's very seldom more than $20,000. And the objective of it is to make it cheaper for you to buy back your data than for you to try to recover it. Governments have paid money, major corporations have paid money, almost everybody at some point has paid money. The way you can tell that is some conventional person from government, from the private sector, comes to you and says, how can I buy Bitcoin? You could be guaranteed that the Bitcoins are being used for ransom. And so we're starting to look at an economy, and again, in the trillions of dollars, where you don't have to come. People steal from bank accounts more than bank robbers do. You don't need a gun. You don't need to take the risk anymore. And we've sort of taken it for granted. All those people who raised their hands and said, I got this credit card. The account was hacked. The bank paid for it. Who cares? We've built up this immunity to it. The truth of the matter is we all pay for it. Very much like retail stores build theft into it. Credit card companies build it into the pricing model, which then get passed back to the retailer, who then passes it back to the consumer. And so when you try to figure out how do you pass $5 trillion back to people, it becomes a real issue. The traditional stolen individual identification information has taken on a greater sophistication. We've started to look at how do we deal with the issues. Our ability to defend against this kind of theft is almost ineffective. And there's more innovation done by hackers than there are by those defending against that. It's estimated that there are 1,000 new versions of malware produced every month. When you start to look at it, there are millions of versions of malware being produced by it. And so we're starting to look at how do we deal with the issue produced every month. When we looked at, I'll tell you, sir, I was in a Central American country 2 years ago, and they got a note that they threatened to hack the banks over a weekend, and the government decided to shut down the banks. So the threat to industry is great. We can close down things. Everything we do is automatic. But let's say, for example, you and your organization have dealt with the problem of hackers. You're the most sophisticated organization. You built firewalls. You built encryption. You built every bioidentification known to man. You feel safe? Not really. Did you read my script? No, really. Not really. By the way, those of you using your iPhones, Androids, Windows screen, right now, that might be the biggest threat we see. For example, all of this bring your own device to work where everybody connects to sophisticated encrypted VPN networks. Malware is now being transported through those kind of devices. all this bring your own device to work. When we look at those securities, how many of you really had your heads down and been doing all this work and think that you're helping your company, but in fact, you're promoting that malware into the systems that we've tried to protect? When we look at those securities, forget about the network intercept device, forget about spoofing. The apps on your phone may be the source of all the hacking. There are 120 million apps that exist in the world. Estimates are 10% of them are malware. If you have an Android device, guaranteed you have malware. In 2014, a survey was done. 97% of all malware was on Android. And the reason for that was purely an economic one. Everybody wanted to compete with Apple. They wanted to, and one of the things they had to compete with was the Apples. And so the Android developers went out to everybody and said, give us apps. And the quality control disappeared. You didn't see any of this. If you feel like you have an iPhone, don't worry about it. They got some guys. Everybody said, give us apps. Last year, they hacked the iPhone toolkits that are used by developers to develop the same apps that you're using. And so the issue became 4,000 of them were immediately affected. There is a list of them. It's too late. Let me just ask a question. It's sort of an interesting question. And so the issue became, how many of you on your laptops have some kind of virus protection? How many of you have it on your phones? Let me just ask you a question. It's sort of an interesting. What happened to the rest of you guys? So the issue became, how many of you on your laptops? So when you start to look at what we're doing, we've extended out the range of the ways people can attack us. So you think it's safe to open emails on your phone. When we look at conventional hacks, we start to look at supply chain and what's happening. One of my favorite stories is Target. 3 years ago, Target gets hacked. The point-of-sale machine. It's a very sophisticated hack. They embed a virus in a point-of-sale machine, steal the information, and store it on servers in Sao Paulo and Miami. So even if they get caught, nobody can figure it out. It's a very sophisticated hack. 6 months later, they've hacked 40 million credit cards. And Target gets sued by two of the credit card issuers saying that, in fact, they didn't protect the data. And the courts have agreed that they didn't protect the data. And they fined them $10 million. 25 cents per customer. By the way, postage in the United States is 47 cents. I'm still waiting for my quarter. And so what you're starting to see is companies building this in to the cost of doing business. JP Morgan gets hacked. It's $100 million to their already $250 million budget for security. Federal government of the United States, $4.5 billion. And the Office of Personnel Management gets hacked, and 21 million records get released. Some of them for covert operations. And so we're starting to look at the problems that we face. I think what we're seeing is the fact that disasters are chasing us. We don't have to worry about nature. We don't have to worry about anything else. But now, if you're not frightened enough, I have one more thing. Enter the Internet of Things. By looking at the interconnection by the Internet of computing devices embedded in everyday objectives so that they can enable receiving information back and forth. So when I came back from the airport, I live in New York, in LA, 90 degrees in New York, and it was 75 degrees in LA. When I got on the plane, I realized that my house was 86 degrees. So I turned on my air conditioner. Think about the fact that people now remotely start their cars. Think about all the things you do. You turn on the lights, you turn on the security. We've seen automobiles being hijacked in the middle of it. Tesla, who is at the leading edge of what we think is technology, has had its entry system hacked so people can not only open the doors, but start the car and drive away. If you think about really what that means, is think about the controlling in the intake of medicine. When Vice President Cheney went in for surgery Bush was president, the chief of surgery shut down the internet for fear that somebody would hack it and introduce a drug into the system to kill the vice president. It's almost James Bond-like. One of the great things about a hack these days is you can kill somebody without being there. Change their medicine, take out the allergy, change the diagnosis. And so the fact that the spread of the internet, 24 billion devices by its earliest estimate, I think the Federal Trade Commission says it's 24 billion devices, Gartner says it'll be 24 billion devices by 2020, and Next Magazine says it's 50 billion devices. In fact, my greatest source of information is the elevator in my office building. That screen, they tell me the baseball scores. They tell me all the scores, but I noticed there was this great thing the other day. It came out and says that every home in the United States will have a robot in it by 2025. Think Terminator. But that's the issues that we're facing. So it's very easy to talk about the dramatic ones. The ones where we have an issue, where we can see a hurricane, we can see an earthquake. The other thing we're having, and it's a big problem, is lack of private and public sector cooperation. This year alone, we have seen Apple fight off the FBI and the Department of Justice not wanting to give out information about their secret coding and the security around their devices. They don't want to give the government a backdoor into it because there's very little trust in what the government does. I don't know if we don't even talk about private-public sector partnership when it comes to technology. And so there's this big issue between privacy and the ability of the government to control information. For those of you we had the big issue with the shooting in San Bernardino, where one of the terrorists who was killed, they had his iPhone 5C, and the government wanted Apple to unlock it. Apple said he couldn't unlock it. First they said they couldn't unlock it. Second they said we won't unlock it. So the government finally found a way to be able to unlock it. Nobody understands what the information was, but we knew that the terrorists used an app called Telegram. And Telegram is an encrypted email messaging system that allows you to actually erase the message after a period of time. Telegram. The wife will never be able to, nobody will ever be able to see your instant message. But we've started to build those things. So the threats that we see are just not the obvious ones. It's really easy to talk about the dramatic, but it's not really easy to talk about what's mundane, how we live our everyday lives, how we communicate. More and more, almost everything you now have has a microphone. It's almost nothing that does it. My refrigerator can monitor it from wherever. Still we're trying to figure out how I can refill it remotely. But in any case, my time is just about up. I'm trying to make up something, hopefully only for this presentation. And so after releasing the demons of nature, man, technology, and intrusion, I want to leave you with what was left of Pandora's box after she released all the evils in the world. And that's hope. The hope lies within each of you and your colleagues who have and will continue to find a way to help us thwart threats and build a culture of preparedness through forums like this that share information and ideas for the betterment of us all. Thank you. We'll continue to find a way to help us and build a culture of preparedness.
Thank you, Mr. Berman, both for your expert input on cyberterrorism and a true reality check. I won't use the word fear, I'll use reality check. Cyberterrorism truly affects all of us, public and private, and also on a personal basis. I would now like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Nugent-Hill, who's our Director of Government and Corporate and Community Affairs for Tropical Shipping. Cyberterrorism truly affects all of us, public and private, and also on a personal basis. I would now like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Nugent-Hill, who's our Director of Government and Corporate and Community Affairs for Tropical Shipping. Cyberterrorism truly affects all of us, public and private, and also on a personal basis. I would now like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Nugent-Hill, who's our Director of Government and Community Affairs. Cyberterrorism truly affects all of us,
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to have all these handsome men around me trying to make sure that I'm straight. Ladies, you're great. Just look at them. And then Trinidad, look at them walk. Put your hands together for the good-looking guys from Trinidad. It's good to have all these handsome. The protocol has been established, and I will honor that. And I'm excited about the conversation and the opportunity that's been provided for us to share with you some thoughts. And in the essence of time, what I'm going to do is to quickly just take us through preparing for the unthinkable. Disasters are going to happen. We heard that today. And more importantly, I just heard that my BlackBerry, that I still have a BlackBerry, or the BlackBerry users, tell your age. None? Nobody's hacking the Black. Go on, girl. That's right. Two brave souls. Oh, except yours might be the most recent model. So I'm going to get rid of my iPhone, because that's what Dr. Berman just described. I don't know. That's a disaster waiting now, not for an organization, but for me personally. And then I might as well throw away my Android phone, because I walk with 3 phones. So I'm going to get rid of my iPhone. The question that we want to ask ourselves, though, is, are we prepared? The idea of this conversation is really to get us thinking about preparedness and responsiveness and our ability to recover our economy and our country in this instance very quickly. The data's there. The chambers of commerce for years have been saying without preparation, businesses 1 in 4 will not recover. And so in my presentation to you, I'm really speaking to you from the as part of the private sector. And this is applicable for government agencies as well, but this is more directed to some of our NGO partners that are here. I know the Red Cross is here, the churches, religious organizations represented here today. But we have to always ask ourselves, because we do know where the resources are going to come from to get the economy rolling again. Government doesn't make money. The business community makes money. And hopefully all of us are paying our right portion of our taxes in order to get the business up and running. We described all of the devastating disasters. Some are very well known. We know Katrina. We know that the mayor of New Orleans, spoke up to Mr. Bush. Now Mayor Nagin is in prison, right? Okay, so the mayor is in prison because the mayor wasn't about Katrina necessarily, but it was about Katrina. Devastating hurricanes. Hugo was my first lesson. Well, Gilbert's a little bit about the water and so forth. He was stuck in Puerto Rico's airport for about 3 days, slept on the floor because we couldn't travel back to St. Croix, which was my home at the time. Hurricane Hugo was my greatest lesson about preparedness, or the lack thereof. It was also an opportunity for me. That's where I stepped into the role of handling disaster readiness and understood that every business needed to be prepared, but also the country needed to be prepared. The governor at the time, Governor Farrelly, who subsequently became my boss because I stepped in to help with some crisis management for the effects of Hurricane Hugo. St. Croix was devastated. I confessed to my husband everything that I should not have confessed, because I thought I was going to die. And then I said, it's your turn. Tell me everything you need to know, because the winds are blowing, the roof is gone. We may be the only people surviving. We need to tell the truth before we die, Alan. So he told me things he wasn't supposed to tell me. So Hurricane Hugo didn't just destroy St. Croix, it created opportunities for confession. Truth. We all understand that disasters are going to happen. We've seen them all. The television, the things of everything the internet shows us now. When I saw what happened in Dominica, and Dominica is a favorite place of mine, I thought it was our tsunami of the Caribbean when we saw the raging waters. We're now dealing with viruses, Zika and something else I just found out, can't pronounce the name, in another part of our Caribbean country that is now a mosquito-borne illness. It just showed up 2 weeks ago. There are things that are going to force us as businesses to plan. Business continuity is an important part of business transactions today. You're going to hear from someone who speaks much better and is much more informed very soon after me with regards to business continuity and how to get it done. So the idea is that we need to understand our risks and we need to know our vulnerabilities and write towards them. So the way we organized the workshop today was so that you could hear from the experts, understand what was your vulnerability as it relates to natural hazards. And then, of course, the one that is primarily a concern to me is the potential for cybersecurity terrorism in the region, which we are now having to deal with. We know one of our Caribbean countries dealt with it by paying a ransom. I won't tell you who. They won't. You'll probably search it yourself. But I put up this picture of Trinidad and I thought, what are the possibilities of a disaster occurring in Port of Spain and we're all having to deal with where we are located? Professor Watlington described what happened in Haiti and what happened in Chile and the difference. It was because we weren't controlling our land and water use management system. We locate our businesses, majority of us located in one area. The thing about Trinidad that I've never forgotten the first time I came here, was actually this workshop about 12 years ago, was the vulnerability of an incident happening in Port of Spain and we're all trying to get out. We can't move. We can't move. We're stuck. So, in terms of writing a business continuity, and when I heard the presentation on behalf of Dr. Ramroop today, it made me really remind myself that when governments can create policies for businesses to try and regulate how we do plans, and I'm one of those former bureaucrats who say, you know, government needs to hold the hands and do things right. I'm on the opposite side of that. I really believe that the best way to implement policies that generate preparedness is when collaboration and partnership can work. My rule of thumb is I don't think government should legislate policies that businesses really can do well for themselves through real leadership that my colleagues spoke about this morning, coming together to create a collaboration. And we've seen examples of it. Grenada is going to be better next week, after next week, because of the trade win exercise that involves the public and the private sector, and the example that my colleague from Southtown presented this morning. We wrote the scenario in partnership with Southtown because we thought that Grenada and the Port Authority and the Air Authority needed to understand what are the vulnerabilities and how they're going to do it. And I tell you, it's going to be a great exercise. You want to pay attention to it here in Trinidad to see how the results come out. Because whatever happens in Grenada is going to happen here. After Hurricane Ivan closed Grenada, this became our focal point of recovery. I remember flying in some small little plane from here to get over to Grenada to see the team and to do whatever we could at Tropical, which is our philosophy. But we also believe that our dependency on each other, in this instance, businesses are dependency on our vendors and suppliers. Dr. Berman in his presentation talked about that first hack. You know, mentioned Target, and we heard about the other big one. And you remember how that happened? It was really a vendor, a member of the supply chain, and the hack occurred simply because an invoice was sent and they got into that small business site, and that's what we need to pay attention to. It is not always the big businesses, it's the small vendors who becomes the target, and then you are a conduit to the cybersecurity and terrorism effort. So in this instance, my thought is to tell you that in the Caribbean, we're small businesses. I know we got some big ones that are multi-global companies and multinational, but a well-developed business continuity plan concerns itself with what's happening here in Trinidad. Businesses need to write their plan, we need to write our plans specifically to the hazards and the vulnerability of our specific location. The idea of business continuity planning to me is always to control the outcome. I learned that from the person you're going to hear from next is through him, and through BRI I was able to get a certification in continuity planning. And one thing I came out of that course was understanding how to control the outcomes, because it is going to happen. A disaster is going to happen. The question is, how do you control the results? One thing that I want to say, and I say this from a cultural perspective, being a Caribbean person, and I told you it'll mix up. But for me, the issue in the region is always how we prepare and take care of our workforce. Culturally, we're family. Got family in Panama, my Jamaican heritage, my Crucian heritage in St. Croix, and the rest of the world. Culturally, that's who we are. But the question from a business perspective, do we understand the people first? And if you don't write that into your plan, no one is going to be there to take care of your business after a disaster, because somebody will take care of my family. But a well-developed business continuity plan in a region concerns itself with, have I thought through the workforce development? Have I concerned myself with our people and their family, as our CEO oftentimes says? And believe you me, it's part of what we do. Knowing how to exercise your plan is a must. Understanding the gaps and then establishing chain of command. All the things that we talk about as you write a business continuity plan. The communication, ensuring that unbroken communication, sharing data, sharing information, sharing status, and staying in touch with your people. Very quickly, let me go through this because Dr. Berman has given a great oversight on the issue of cyber terrorism. The region, the Caribbean, is a target. Do you know why we're a target? 80% of our revenue comes from visitors. We are tourism driven. Our tourists buy their tickets, their airline, they pay for their hotels and life. And so hackers have been studying the region for a very long time. And they understand our vulnerabilities. They know that we have not thought through the best possible ways that we can. So what I want to say to you is, small and medium-sized business in the region, we are dependent on visitors coming to our country. Our economy is a tourist-driven one. We need to remind ourselves that risk online is now part of our business processes, and I'm sure when Mr. Price comes, he will share with you some of those thoughts. Dr. Berman reminded us we're the target. We're the hacker's target. The region is. Your business in the region is a hacker's target. You are already on someone's list. If you didn't believe it, listen to what Dr. Berman said. And I didn't see his notes before I prepared this. So cybersecurity is now becoming an issue, a business task. Because in your supply chain, you need to be building in a question from the people who supply you. What are their continuity measures? What are they doing to ensure that they're protecting you? But you as the business owner in the Caribbean today, or business manager, your responsibility is ensuring now that you're protecting and minimizing the liability of what customers will sue you for. Hackers' ransom can be expensive. I sat in a Microsoft presentation at a conference in Atlanta last year that was sponsored by Dr. Berman's group. And the presentation really gave me pause. It made me realize that as a company, no matter what you do in preparing, you have to constantly be testing your system because the liability factor is on us. So now in your business, you need to be concerning yourself with the fact that a third of businesses surveyed experience fraud and attempts. Think about the region. Think about your business right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So now in your business, you need to be concerned. Cyberterrorism is very real, extremely real. There are some steps I've suggested, and this presentation will be available through our manager, and I'm sure Ev will be able to get this presentation to you if you so desire in providing her to request. Some suggestion, and I give credit for this presentation to Microsoft. This was a Microsoft presentation through a contract with the U.S. Small Business Administration geared specifically for small businesses, and they suggested some stuff. It is online, and I have to say this, these little, these thumb drives all have some online websites, some links we copied with permission from various organizations, including the International Association of Insurance Adjusters, Strategies for Small Businesses and Small Nations, with regards to how you can help protect yourself. In closing, the cost of not having a business continuity plan is too high. That picture sits with me every time. That's Haiti. That is Port-au-Prince eliminated with over 300,000 people, our brothers, cousins, relatives, people of the Caribbean. St. Croix is still suffering the effects. This was 1989. There are hotels that have never been rebuilt, people's jobs never replaced, children who left the islands because the schools were so devastated. Relocated families never reconnected. Hurricanes, natural disasters are disruptive. Very disruptive. So in closing, we talk about all of these. We're going to work towards them very shortly. The resiliency and leadership in action is critically important. If we had more time, we'd talk about an example as to what happened in Cozumel when leadership in public sector and leadership in the private sector came together to recover after the devastation. Finally, I'd like to share this with you. There are no heroes in any disasters. The Red Cross representatives are here. There are no heroes. They're heroes in any disaster. They're the people who step in. When we break for lunch and come back to the work groups after this presentation coming up, I'm going to ask you to become people who step in, not step away from dealing with the issues and the suggestions, knowing the vulnerabilities that was shared with you, and the 5 steps that was referred to by the young lady representing Dr. Ramroot. My boss always say, take care of your people and they'll take care of you. Take care of your people and they'll take care of you. There's no businesses in Trinidad that can afford to not do this. You must. So I thank everyone, and I'm going to turn this back to Ev so she can do the proper introduction of our speaker. I sped through that presentation. It's a longer one, but invite me back and just have some roti for me the next time, and I'll be happy to be here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer preluded, we will now have Mr. James Fry, the owner and instructor of 3J Contingency Planning Services Limited and Disaster Recovery, DRI International. Thank you, Mr. Fry. Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer preluded, we will now have Mr. James Fry, the owner and instructor of 3J Contingency Planning Services Limited and Disaster Recovery, DRI International. Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, come on, we can do better than that. I know it's been a good long morning, but it's been a productive morning. So let me try it again. Good afternoon. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. A lot has been said urging private sector participation. But before I begin my actual presentation, we're going to have a little participation by some of you that are here in this conference. We've talked a lot about the necessity of building plans and the reason for building plans. But I hope through this quick demonstration, you'll really see the value of it. Now, what I'm asked Jennifer to do is to distribute some playing cards. There are 12 playing cards throughout this room, and we're going to have a disaster. And what I want to happen is this. We have a company, a fictitious company with 4 divisions. As you know that there are 4 suits in a deck of cards. So let me tell you how your company is organized. Hearts represents HR. Spades represents IT. Diamonds represent operations. And as I typically always do, I let clubs represent management because there's a hard head. Their heads are the hardest. Now, here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a disaster. When I clap my hands, I want the people who have the cards to get up and to move to various spots in this room. Now, here are the 4 spots. Now, spot number 1 is where Evelyn is standing. Spot number 2 will be here, in front of this sign that says Hurricane Central. Spot number 3 will be this sign. This is tropical shipping. And area number 4 will be right there next to Dr. Berman. Like that, Dr. Berman. All right. No, this corner over here where the mirror is. All right? And I'm going to time you. And that's all I'm going to tell you. Are we ready? Okay. You may go. Come on, let's move quickly. That's all I'm going to tell you. Are we ready? Okay. Come on, come on, come on. Everybody with a like suit, find one of those spots. In other words, all of the same suit have to be in the same spot. Are we ready? Now there should be 3 people in every There should be 3 people in every. Nobody's here.
Everybody with a like suit, find
Come on, come on, come on.
one spot. No words, all of the same suit have to be in the same spot. Are we ready? There should be 3 people in
There should be 3 people here.
There should be 3 people.
Nah, I didn't tell you what group. Oh, no. No, I didn't give you a group. That's a guy. Exactly. All right.
Same suit have to be in the same spot.
All right. Great. So now what do we have over here?
There should be 3 people in there. Should be
Management, all clubs. What do we have here?
3 people. I didn't tell you.
All spades. Good. IT. What do we have over here?
No, I didn't give you.
Diamonds. Operations. What do we have over here?
Exactly.
Hearts. All IT. Great. Very good. Now, let's go back to your seats very quick. Come on. Quick.
There should be management, all clubs. What do we
Let's
have?
show you how this works.
All spades. Good. IT. What do we have over here?
Now,
Operations.
I want,
over here.
if you're sitting, I want those 12 people to exchange their cards with somebody. Don't look at it. Just change your card. Don't want you to have the same card. Don't want you to have the same card. We're going to do this again.
What do we have over here? Now,
Yeah, change it with someone else. Just change it with someone else. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just give it. Yeah. Same. All right, we can have 12 different people. It doesn't matter. Just give a card to someone else. Give it to someone else. Now, we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. I'm going to ask Jennifer and if they will come here and stand next to me.
All right, we can have 12 different people. Doesn't matter. Just give a card to someone. Give it to someone.
And I'm going to give Evelyn 2 cards. I'm going to give Jennifer 2 cards. And if we had more time, we'd do it a little bit differently. But here's what's going to happen. I want all 12 of you that have a card to turn it over and look at it.
I'm going to give Evelyn
Clearly understand which card you have, which suit. Now, I'm going to ask Jennifer to announce into which corner a particular suit will go. Okay, Jennifer?
Okay, so spade and hearts. So spade here and hearts back here in the corner.
Clubs here and diamonds at the rear, right here.
So do we understand now? Those of you who have a card, spades will be, hearts will be here. I'm sorry, spades will be here, hearts will be there, and clubs will be here, diamonds will be here. Are we good? Hello? Are we good? All right, when I say go, those of you that have the card, are you ready? Let's move. Go. Go. No, shh. Don't say a word. Not allowed to say a word. Let's go.
Hello? Are we good? All right. When I
Let's go. Very good.
Are you ready? Let's move. Go. Go. No, shh. Don't say a word. Not allowed to say a word. Let's go.
All right. Very good. All right. Take your seat. Take your seat.
Let's go.
Now, as these participants take their seats, let's talk about very quickly what we had and did not have. That's in scenario 1. What did we have? Anybody? We had confusion. We had confusion. Anything that we did not have in scenario 1? We had no instruction. We did not have clear instruction. We had people calling out, trying to find out where they wanted to go, where they needed to be. What else did we not have?
In scenario 1 and did not have. We had no instruction.
No previous exposure. We did not have any leaders. Exactly. And no experience. So in scenario 2 versus what we did not have in scenario 1, what did we have in scenario 2? We had leaders. Jennifer and Evelyn, strong leaders.
We did not have any.
We had, what else did we have?
No experience. So in scenario 2,
We had previous experience.
we did not have in scenario 1.
What else did we have?
We had leaders.
We had order. Yes. In other words, we had a
We had.
plan. Yes.
What else?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, we had an understood plan, had been communicated. So there was training and awareness. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want each of you to think of your companies. 12 large companies. Let's say 12 large private companies in this Trinidad Tobago community. Think of your building,
There was training and
a large number of people in your building. Which scenario would you rather have? Scenario 1 or scenario 2?
in this Trinidad Tobago.
I mean, we'd rather have scenario 2.
Yeah.
Think of your building. There was training and
Then I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that
which scenario
what we're trying to do.
Scenario 1.
That is what we are offering you. That's what we're asking you to do today.
I mean, we'd rather have scenario 2.
That's what we're trying to do here.
Then I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that which scenario what we're trying
A little bit about me. I didn't know. I put that slide in because when Jennifer said somebody who knows more than she did about this, I was trying to figure out who that guy was. So I threw that slide in. But much of what, as my introduction, as my profile shows, I'm kind of wearing 2 hats here. I own my own consulting company, but I'm also an instructor for the Disaster Recovery Institute. And that's how I met Jennifer, by the way. Protocols all being established. I really want to thank her and Tropical Shipping for having me. But so I'm wearing 2 hats here. As I said, I own my own company, but I'm also an instructor for the DRI. And much of what you will see here is taken from the professional practices from the Disaster Recovery Institute International to help you to understand exactly how to build a business continuity or disaster recovery or emergency response plan, which is what we've been talking about most of the day. So as we stand here, we see the project management, the policy standards, in other words, establishing the framework. This diagram shows the business impact analysis, which I'll get into, and the risk evaluation. And from that, we develop the strategy. In other words, how we're going to protect our company. And from that, we build our plans, and we go here from testing them, as Jennifer alluded to, plan maintenance, and I'll talk more about that in just a little bit, training and awareness, and the one phase that we hope we never have to get to, and that is to execute. I've done a lot of plans in my 25 years of experience, and one of the things that I tell all of my clients is that I hope I never have to execute one of my plans. And I'm sorry, I just don't do well behind podiums. I'm actually, on Sunday morning, I'm actually a minister, so I get enough. So allow me to roll today, if you will. Thank you very much. Why is business continuity important? Obviously, we put a lot of emphasis on this initially. Number one reason, to safeguard human life. I can replace land, I can replace resources, but I don't, and none of us have the power to replace a human life. We cannot put a value on it. So it is incumbent upon us as business owners, it is incumbent upon us as organizations, it is incumbent upon us even as members of a family. And we talked about that briefly this morning, to do everything that we can when we know things can happen, because all the things that we thought previously could not happen, ladies and gentlemen, are happening. And so it is incumbent upon us to do everything that we can to think outside the box, to think before these things happen, to do what we can to safeguard human lives. Obviously, as we've seen from our little demonstration here, we want to minimize confusion to make sure that we can make effective decisions at the time of a crisis. Our decision making as we go through this and we talk about testing plans and going over them again, our decision making, we would love for it to be almost instinctive. In other words, we've gone through this and done this so many times that when the crisis really happens, our behavior is almost instinctive. To reduce dependency on specific personnel, I'm sure all of you may be in situations where in your organization, if one person leaves, anybody in that situation, you know, that one person walked out the door, we're in trouble. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that was a good example. Yeah. That one person walks out the door. Or for those of you techies, with that one piece of equipment guys, we're in trouble. So we want to make sure that we reduce dependency on specific personnel, specific processes, for specific places even. Obviously, we want to minimize the loss of these things, adequate customers, things of that sort. We want to survive. This is a beautiful place. This is my first visit to Trinidad, these islands. And in one day, I've seen just how beautiful it is. I definitely want to come back. We got to ensure the survival of this wonderful place. Satisfying the legal or regulatory requirements. Don't know what all the businesses that are represented here, but certainly we are regulated. Many of us are regulated, so we need to make sure that we're satisfying the legal requirements. Make sure that you've done your homework. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Make sure that you satisfy your customers, your critical business functions. What is it? Why are you in this? What is your purpose? What is your mission? And certainly after a disaster, you want to make sure that you can continue to carry that mission, carry out that mission. That bottom line now with the advent of technology, Facebook, Twitter, what is your mission? And as we just talked about, as Mr. Berman talked about, we've got the technology, so now many people know about your disaster before all of you will know, because we have cameras. They upload information. And so your image is out there for the world to see. And if you have not adequately planned your responses to these disasters when they hit, you can be put out of business by your image being damaged.
And as we said, hurricane season began on June 1st, so we're already 6 days into this. Here we've got just some components of a true business continuity program where we have business continuity, which is basically the umbrella we talk about in most companies, under the umbrella of contingency management. And underneath we have business continuity plan versus disaster recovery plan. Disaster recovery, if you want the Cliff Notes definition, the IT, the business continuity, the non-IT, but that's just high level definition. And here we are, the ABCs, and we'll get into this on topic, the ABCs of a good program. And from here I'm taking information from the Disaster Recovery Institute Professional Practices, which really provides a methodology and a framework that's accepted all over the world for building good business continuity and disaster recovery plans. So we see here program initiation and management, risk assessment, we talked about that, the business impact analysis, developing your strategies, and from that you develop your plans, awareness and training, which is extremely important, and obviously your business continuity plan exercise, auditing, maintenance, to making sure that your plans are up to date and remain up to date. So we broke this down, Jennifer gave me the topic of the ABC. Being the person that I am, I wanted to make sure that I followed my directive here, follow the directive. So I actually broke it down into the A's, B's, and the C's. So for A, assess. Finding the program, finding the scope and objectives of your program. What are we trying to do? Whom are we trying to protect? What are we trying to protect? Finding the scope and objectives, finding the roles and responsibilities in your organization. Who does what? Who's responsible for what? Who's paying the bills? Stating the assumptions, what we can protect, what we will protect, how much are we willing to accept in terms of risk. And speaking of risk, how do we control that risk? We must identify where we are vulnerable. What are the threats? What are the things that can happen to our particular companies, our particular business? How vulnerable are we today? I imagine if each of you would get out of your offices and walk around, you might be surprised to learn just how vulnerable you are. And I'm sure that I saw a lot of eyebrows raised when Dr. Berman was talking about your iPhones and your cell phones and all those things that we take for granted. eyebrows will raise. So you might be surprised just how vulnerable when you walk around the four walls of your company that you really are. Then you want to prioritize those risks. There's no way that all of us can prevent everything. So there are some things that we have to accept. What are the chief risks for your area? There's some things that are major, some things that can cause an extreme amount of damage, have a high impact, high risk. So you want to look at those things. And once you identify those things, what are the mitigating strategies? What can we institute to help control these things? We cannot prevent them always, but we can certainly do things to mitigate. And the key here is to mitigate or to reduce the impact that an event will have on your organization. Third thing is the business impact analysis. And here we kind of look inside the organization where we identify our mission critical functions. What are the things that we do that we must be able to continue to do after the emergency? What is it that marks us, that makes us who we are? So we want to be able to continue those things. And as we take a deep dive into that, what are the applications? What are the processes? What are the functions? Who are the people? Who are the vendors that make all of these things possible for us to do? Because remember, we work and change. None of us live, well, I almost said no man is an island. None of us live on an island. What am I saying? On an island. Yes. But seriously, we don't work in silos. We don't work in islands. We depend on each other. And so what are the things that we must do in order to survive? And once we identify those mission critical functions, applications, processes, we must understand if we lost them for a time, how quickly do we need to recover? Because now our customers may have customer impact, financial impact, reputational impact, legal and regulatory impact. We must define those critical processes, identify them, and then set a time and understand how quickly we need to recover those things. Not only how quickly we need to recover them, but to what point? From a technical standpoint, how old can the data be? All these things should be a part of your impact analysis. And here we also identify strategies that enable us to continue our mission critical functions or to recover them. This is kind of another diagram of this process where we're doing the assessment, creating questionnaires, and there are various ways to gather this data, creating questionnaires, analyzing that data, creating a report, submitting it, and moving on to develop those strategies. We develop those strategies based on the information from our risk evaluation and from our business impact analysis. We identify the most cost-effective strategies. Obviously, we don't want to spend $5,000 or $50,000 to protect a $5,000 asset. So we want to identify the most cost-effective and efficient strategies, even to consolidate where possible. One strategy may cover a number of areas. So we want to identify the cost-effective, efficient strategies to help our business. And we also want to create a timeline for strategy implementation. One of the things that I always use in my classes, I always give the choice. Here's a guy that wants to sell you a generator. He can sell it to you for $500,000 and he puts it in 90 days. Or here's a guy that wants to sell you the same generator for $750,000 and he can put it in 30 days. And I ask my class the question, which one would you buy? It's May 31st. And so then I ask them the question, do you feel lucky? Well, do you? Once you get the strategies, then you actually build and develop the plan, the document. And you see here BCP, Business Continuity Plan, Disaster Recovery Plan, Emergency Response Plan, Crisis Management Plan. Just some examples of the types of plans that come under the umbrella of contingency planning. You implement those strategies that we talked about earlier. Develop the formats for the actual document, for the document, and then you document those procedures. Put them in that book. So now you've got your plan. Now what? Guess what? As soon as you put that last period on it, I got news for you. It's out of date. Why? Because each one of you work, live in dynamic situations. There's the big C, change. So how do we handle it? Communications and confirm, which is our C. We want to make your organization aware, one, that we have a plan. Two, that we focus on training for those people that have executable responsibilities for your plan. There are some things in your organization that everybody should know. How to get out of the building. Where are the fire exits? But there are some things that certain people should know. How to execute your recovery plan. Not only, you see, there are culture change. The goal here is to change the way that people think in your organization. Change the way that people think, even in your house. My wife gets at me all the time. By the way, my wife, she came in late this morning, and Jennifer asked me, said, "Where's Marilyn?" I said, "She's coming later." Why? She's tired and she's retired. And my wife said she's retired. She's really retired. But she tells me all the time, when we go into places, you're looking for the exit. You're looking for the fire extinguishers to see that they're up to date. You're always looking. And because it's the way I am. And the goal here for your organization, you want people to become aware of their surroundings, become aware of how important staple machines, copiers, things of that sort are to their business. We take these things for granted, ladies and gentlemen. We take them for granted. So what you're trying to do through communication, through training and awareness, is to actually create a culture change in your organization. We want to be able to change the way that people think. And from what I've heard here, the effort for OPDM to get everybody involved in planning and exercising and testing is exactly where we need to go. In other words, to change the way that people think, to change and to make all of us aware that in an instant, all of these things that surround us that we consider beautiful and we take for granted could be wiped out and gone. So we want to change the way we're working to change the way people think. And in your organizations, as changes are made in your organization, you want to develop some type of control mechanism so that people are talking within your organization to make sure that these changes are coordinated, that your plans that you just work so hard to create are updated, and that they're current so that they can deal with emergencies as changes come about in your organization. Again, improve those strategies so that your plan works for you. The ABCs of business continuity. I went through that rather quickly, but are there any questions? I'll be here again. Thank you very much. I'll be here for the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Price. We will now break for some lunch. It is in the room, it is in the restaurant, just to your right as we exit the door, and we'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Price. We will now break for some lunch. It is in the room, it is in the restaurant, just to your right as we exit the door, and we'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Price. We will now break for some lunch. It is in the room, it is in the restaurant, just to your right as we exit the door, and we'll reconvene in 30 minutes. I'll be here for the rest of the conference. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. O'Price. We will now break for some lunch. It is in the room, it is in the restaurant, just to your right as we exit
Gotcha. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Understood. All right. Thank you. Gotcha. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Good. I'm glad you were able to attend. Part of it. Okay. There's some interesting information on pump drive. Thank you. Yeah. Good. There's frequent continuity. Yeah. Framework and lingo. Exercise depending on the size of each organization. Thank you. Okay. 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 Good. That's very interesting. Yes. I look forward to getting more information. Okay. All right. Turn.